Ladies and gents, welcome back to Prospect Cup. We get to see a little bit more. You guys aren't done with us quite yet. This time, instead of Bull Skunk and Man of Class, we traded out the casters for a couple of younger bucks. It's me, I'm Dorian. I'm joined by Moxie to bring you today's match. Mox, how you feeling?
I mean, a little bit tired, but I'm sure as soon as that Overwatch starts up, the hours will just fall away. And if you're free or free esports, you're hoping that fatigue is going to be falling away. You've just come out of a game up against Regen, and you didn't do too well, but you've got to reset the mentality. It's a fresh team, it's a fresh match, it's a fresh face.
On the bright side, it was quick.
Silver linings,
that's the best thing that we can say about that series for 303, wasn't it? Why don't you tell us how that one went?
I mean, I like the composition that they're running. Free really heavily leaned into dive, but it's a dive that we're getting to see teams adapt into their styles a lot more often these days when you have that Winston, when you have that Zarya. In fact, you and I, we were both watching it during, there was one play that I immediately want to draw your eye to, and that is a cash on this Winston. He's a very good Winston player, but I don't think he's actually normally with the team. Is that right, Because he's not up on that team sheet.
No, I think he may be a ringer, but honestly, I think this is it's a great player to have in. Greg's a fantastic off tank, but for me, and for the composition that they like running, Akash is one of the best dive tanks in tier 2.5, whatever you want to call it. Honestly, one of my picks. This guy is going places, and I can't wait to see what he does in this series specifically, but let's go down the rest of the roster. We've got HK, a notorious Genji, this time not playing on his normal account. I believe his normal account is called AE. Now he's actually on an account called HKey broke. I don't know how he typed that with his HKey broken, but he's gotten there somehow, whether he borrowed a keyboard or not. We're here. Zeus is in with them, and then Ani and Alexio as well. Alexio is a nut. Keep an eye on this man when they keep running the dive.
Yeah, but that's not to say that their opponents aren't slouches themselves. Have a look down this MYM roster, and you are going to be seeing a couple of names that, well, you will be recognizing. You've got Dusk, Dunmid, Denthead, Biz, Bizer, Azure, and Graham. And we've got to see these guys in action before I can even remember drawing attention to Denthead. Its Ash play is actually insane, and it all comes down to DPS difference at the moment. Yes, tanks have to be good. Yes, you have to be able to manage to create the space, but it's the DPS who have to come in big. It's the DPS who have to start coming up in that kill feed. Otherwise, you're just not going to go anywhere.
Absolutely. And with the Genji nerf that was intended for today not going through due to some of the bugs on the patch, it opens the room for Mind Your Manners to continue running double shield and continue playing Denthead on that Ash. But we're heading into a point where the double shield is slightly less prevalent, Moxie.
Well, it is double shield, but it's a double shield of a different fashion, isn't it? Slightly more German in its engineering. We see a lot of Reinhardt on this map. It's very similar to that sort of play where you would go for that very brawly composition. You would grab a Reinhardt, you would grab the Zarya, and you would try and get in as quickly as possible. But now you have the Sigma to sort of act as a little bit of a backup, a little bit more of a CC hero to come in with accretion. When people like, say, a Doomfist or a Reaper try to get too close to your front line, you can just social distance them away from you, keeping away at 2 meters at a time. As well, the game is going to social distance from ourselves for a bit. We've got the first pause screen.
Yeah, and so we're seeing two very different ideas of the same composition. Both of them want to brawl, but they want to provide their Reinhardt that little bit of extra protection when he's going in. Whether that's an Orisa, whether it's a Sigma, it functions exactly the same. The support lineups, though, are where I want to draw the real difference, because one of these teams has an immortality field while the other doesn't.
One of them's going to have a fade ability, and that means you have survivability on your own, but not for your team. The Moira can work, but first you have to have control of the point, and second you need to build coalescence as fast, if not faster, than Pascal's amplification.
And these fights start quick. Immortality field, that difference is already forced out. Mind Your Manners are running out of resources already. The Reaper creating so much damage in the face of Para, whose health is bar none at this point. The Genji in his backline will start taking down his members. Now no Orisa shield to hide behind. This man is bound to go down soon enough, but Akash gets way too big for his britches, steps forward, and Mind Your Manners is happy to take that ticket to her first point take.
Pascal managed to get amplification matrix up, but Alexio's got the coalescence door. This is the one thing that Free can use to bolster their forces and push back.
Yeah, now the spawns are coming in. Mind Your Manor should have 1 or 2 players in just before, but their composition is so reliant on picks with the Genji, with the Doomfist, that you need to see them come out in the kill feed. These can't be slow fights. They need to be winning them early, or else they're just going to get ground out by all these abilities from Biz.
But there is no CC on the side of Free right now. There's no Mei, there's no McCree, so the Doomfist and the Genji can go to work, and that is exactly what they do. It's a day at the office for these guys, though, and now you can move up into that prime position and hold so brutally at choke if you're going to actually let them walk past it. No, you're going to hold on to point, try and have a little bit more of an open space fight. It's a risky play, though, especially if we're coming in with this Diva Bomb. You don't want to be out in the open.
Both teams as well have the Dragon Blade, but Mind Your Manners has the Bongo to combo with it. If everybody survives this bomb, you know what, you have to follow it up, then head into the back line with the Dragon Blade, catches 1, can't get any more. The pile drive straight on top, catches 1, but not much more than that. Back through the choke, go 303.
But they're not going to press really aggressively into this choke once again. 303 get a sort of free passage if they choose it, and Greg's going to go onto the Zarya to give you Reinhardt just a little bit more aggression with that bubble. But you need to build up to the Graviton, and even then you don't want to be holding onto HK's Blade until that comes online. You have to start off with it, and you have to find a pick.
It's going to take a long time for them to do that, but this Amplification Matrix gives them anything but that. HK in the backline, low HP, goes down, but Zeus follows up with a huge Death Blast and finds 3 of his own. Mind Your Manor's not out of it yet until Akash lands the Fire Strike to end things.
Oh, MYM. They're suffering from the same problem as Free when it comes to dealing with those DPS. There's not really a lot of CC. Yes, Cal's there with that break, but you've only got 1 shield bash, and you have to use it for so many things. The Reaper, the Genji, neither of them you want to be alive, neither of them you want to be fully in control. And unfortunately, it means you just have nothing to deal with Zeus's Death Blossom, and now you've got nothing really to deal with HK when he comes in to put up that blade again.
Oh, it's going to be a real problem once that ultimate comes up, but for right now, it's Mind Your Manners with the advantage with the Bongo with all the damage. In comes the Dragon Blade. Deadhead's done it again, gets himself a nice 2-piece dinner to clean things up and grab that point right back for MYM.
Both these DPS are just going to be absolutely monstrous when they get those ultimates online, though. There's just a complete lack of focus onto them. Biz with this Doomfist, he might not even need to use Meteor Strike to get himself out because his health bar has been looking pretty healthy. As MYM just going to go for a little bit of extra ult charge for trying to lock in that Fire Strike right through Chug, but HK has been creeping very quickly towards this blade, and because MYM aren't running that Lucio, they don't have the Sound Barrier. It's only going to be the Immortality Field, which can be so easy to bait out if Zeus is able to get close.
But it's a blade, that's it, it's 1 ultimate. Pascal nearly has another Amplification Matrix, but they found a pick early, that's the ticket they need to get into this fight. Now, with the Orisa called out, Starscream drops low, gets finished off by Zeus. They're not gonna need either of the ultimates you mentioned, Moxie. They're doing it bar none.
Immortality Field got baited out so early on into that fight as well, so Alexio's Coalescence is all 303 need. And it's the saving grace for this team. It means they can hold on to the blade for this next fight because you can't allow MYM to win a single one of these engagements, or you have to end them so quickly. If Denthead comes in with that blade and Annie does not have that Sound Barrier online, it is curtains for this team.
This fight can end so early in so many ways as well, with pretty much every DPS being up and online at this point in time. It's basically a battle of who gets the biggest one. In comes the blade, down goes the Immortality Field, forced out. HK's gonna get 2 regardless, though. Zeus follows up with yet another Death Blossom in the back line, holding on for 303 here, 90% taking over. This could be it for the first map, Moxie.
Greg's gonna have a Graviton as well. Pez going to be going on to the Hammond, but you can't get the spin cycle if you're stuck!
Ah, that feels awful, but Mind Your Manners, regardless of how many big ultimates, how many you got online, 303 were still playing the economy better over time. They were winning fights with less ultimates. They were winning fights with bigger ultimates. Mind Your Manners, they had to commit so much to do anything there.
There's one big change in that fight, and it's the one where Pascal has to use Immortality Field to just deal with the Coalescence. If you'd been able to hold on to it a little bit longer, if you'd had something like an Amplification Matrix to try and fight back against that Coalescence with, then HK or Zeus, one of them would have to invest Death Blossom or Blade, and the reason that they have those access to those ults is the reason why they get to win out those next fights. Going forward, MYM, they have to be able to deal with this Moira. Alexio has got to be shut down. It's very easy to do. She's only got a singular fade, and you really do have to punish the fact that 303 are playing without a life support. They're playing without Immortality Field.
They're also playing without a teleporter, and they're not playing poke either. This is a very, very weird composition. They think they can get into this team and try and brawl. They've done so semi-successfully. They're walled off from all of their heals, though. The Reinhardt's going to go down. Akash lasts barely even a second on the point, and the composition for 303 is being proven not as useful as they may have thought.
There's a rule of thumb that you don't advise compositional swaps until at least 2 team fights end, though. But when you're going into a Symmetra so well set up and Biz on this knee, you've got to go for poke. You can't just walk straight forward into this. Akash is actually going to go onto the Winston. And I like Greg swap a lot more. The Hammond has just a little bit extra survivability. He can roll out. He can provide the backline so much sustain to build up to those ultimates. Getting a Winston out without a Zarya bubble is going to be extremely difficult to pull off.
I don't mind this too much. There's a lot of abilities coming up for Mind Your Manners, though, starting off with the projected wall. We come up for the Symmetra. A lot of poke going down on the point, but no kills. That's what the dive is looking for. In and out they go. But Akash looks at the final say, up and over and in. Finished off by Zeus and HK cleaning things up with a blade.
Oh, but you had to use the blade. And now MYM are going to be ahead when it comes to ultimate economy. Alexia is actually going to go off the Moira and onto the Ana. This is risky because now that Denhead's lost that point, you've lost a lot of value as that sim. You can swap off, you can go for something that will go for that backline harassment, which means the Ana will be incredibly vulnerable, and then he cannot use that Sandfire until Biz drops that Blizzard.
And this fight's just as hard as the last one. You're running straight into the brawl. Great anti-nade, though, from Alexio before they get knocked off the map. Does give 303 a way into this fight, as well as Zeus finding even more with the Death Blaster. My God! 5 kills in the fight. This man doesn't stop, Moxie.
A lot invested, though, from the side of 303. And now you're going to have very little when MYM actually come in with that Blizzard. They invested a lot themselves, though, but they're lacking a sound barrier. They've still got their win condition. They've still got that Blizzard in their pocket. Even Pascal's going to have the Immortality Field with a 25-second cooldown. Annie has to wait. Yes, Greg's going to have those hammer mines, and the Cash can try to go for the double trouble, right? You duo up, you pop Primal, and you boot them all in, but it's going to be extremely hard to do, especially if Denhead going on from the crew of the Flashbang.
That Blizzard is avoidable, though. They're playing Dive, probably the best composition at getting out of the Blizzard. In it comes, doesn't catch anybody, gets H-Key, as well as there's no DPS left here for 3-3. They need to end it quickly, and Akash absolutely will, zapping everybody down, leaving just the Orisa on the point.
That was a fight MYM needed to win. They invested heavily in that fight. Or Shatter you can get back. Supercharges you can get back. You can build those up in a fight. Blizzard is a fight-winning ultimate, and you have to treat it as such. And now MYM, they've got Amplification Matrix, but it's Final Fight territory 303. They're playing Dive, they're mobile, they can just disengage out of the fight, whereas you have to walk into them.
Well, they've also got the Nano Blade, which in HK's hand is always a weapon of mass destruction. In he comes, Immortality Field out. How long do they even last, though, when this guy is slicing and slashing through him? 303 end the fight, and look to end this map.
Denthead onto the Reaper a little bit too late, or able to get the teleport, but only able to keep the overtime wick burning for a couple of seconds. And, well, if you're MYM, it's buying the time game now. Pascal needs to come back. This is the only way you can see yourself forward. Drop Amplification Matrix, let this build up that Blizzard.
They've taken down Greg. They have an Amplification Matrix. There's a little bit of damage there, but, I mean, it's just not looking great for him. At this point, you're delaying the inevitable. The May doesn't even get the touch. That's cruel. 303, take away Night Market and take away the first map of the series, which must feel pretty good after that last match.
I mean, I was looking at, like, the history between these teams and their run of Prospect Cup, and 303 definitely had the harder challenge. They've had some real gauntlets in their way, and they got further in their playoff spot as well, though, 1 round further to be exact. So going into this, you would expect them to be the favorites, and we're definitely seeing a slight difference between the two teams. It's a slight difference, but it's definitely there, and 303 have a much better understanding of how to run the composition that they're going in with. The fact that they're still finding value on a Moira and an Ana of all things, that is something that the other team should be laughing at right now. That's something that you have to go in. You have to just take your 2 hands into the middle of that composition and pull it apart, because it is so very fragile at the seams. And it's something MYM are really lacking. They've got that frontline pressure, but the backline has got off scot-free in 99.9% of these engagements, though.
And that's not to mention the fact that 303 are playing with what we believe to be a ringer. Mind your manners, they had every counter in the world. I think they relied a little bit too heavily on the Blizzard in the second map. Blizzard, of course, it's a great ultimate. It's a fight-winning ultimate, still classified as one against Dive, but Dive is really, really good at getting out of Blizzard. So using it as an engagement tool isn't great. As a tool to try and peel away when they dive on top of you, it's pretty good. But trying to put it on top of the dive, far less easy. And that's what we saw Mind Your Manners try to do. It feels like they don't understand the composition that they're playing as well as 303 do. So what I want to see from Mind Your Manners in the next map is identifying their win conditions, finding the parts of the fight that they can win, and then how they need to push after that. It felt like when every time they ran into the dive of 303, it got a little scrappy, but 303 was able to keep their eyes on the road, notice where they need to go, take down one of those tanks, and then finish the fight off of that.
And I mean, something we are seeing from MYM, they are swapping up their composition, but it's more to deal with the DPS and tank. We see the Reaper coming out, we see the McCree coming out, we see the Symmetra coming out. So many swaps just cycling through. It's a little bit of DPS roulette. But that's always to deal with either a tank or like a Winston.
Mhm.
You just go in with the Reaper, the twin barrel shotguns, he takes his head straight off. Or to deal with one of the DPS, you come with that McCree, you flashbang them, and they can do absolutely nothing before they're carted up. One thing that we didn't see MYM doing was going on to infiltrate picks. Like, no Tracer, not really a Genji, nothing that really harasses the backline, and that was something that Pascal was getting 24/7. That Batiste just was not allowed to use Immortality Field for things that are deployable, like Immortality Field with a 25-second really punishing cooldown should be useful because he wasn't allowed to breathe. The dive was coming in and the Batiste would be cornered 94% of the time. And that was a big difference maker as well between the two teams. The fact that Alexio and Annie both get to sit and use their ultimates for whatever they want, the fact that they don't even have to use it for Blizzard, goes to show the two differences in how these teams are operating. There is a much bigger support system in place for Free or Free's backline right now.
Yeah, and before we hop into the next map, I'll say this. There's one thing I don't want to see. It's the Doomfist Genji again. It doesn't work. It doesn't work for a reason. The Doomfist wants to one-shot things. The Genji wants to poke them down. Just doesn't really work together. Mind your manners. So they've got another map to work with, and they're taking us over to Blizzard World. Moxie, what can we expect to see here that's going to be a little bit different from what we saw previously?
So Blizzard World's attack, the way that you approach this point, has changed a little bit. Now there is a very high risk, very high reward option on the table door, and that's when you split your push. If the defense tries to hold up either on the high ground and then retreat to the to the actual point itself, or whether or not they actually set up on the point originally, you want to try and sort of wrap around. The Orisa and the rest of the team tends to veer towards the left, whereas the Sigma tends to go on a sort of solo mission on that right side. And if it works, it buys a lot of attention away from the rest of your team, forces the defenders to turn around and deal with one of the issues, even sometimes pulls out Immortality Field early, and that's the moment the rest of you strike. If it fails, you're left without one of your two shields, you're left without one of your really important tanks, and you're left missing a massive chunk of damage.
Well, we can talk all we want about Orisa Sigma, but I'm looking at what 303 have locked in. This is an Orisa Winston dive kind of composition, locking the legs on Zeus. Really curious to see how this works, but over the course of the game, let's try and highlight a little bit of what they're trying to do, because clearly Akash and HK are going to be in the backline buying space for Zeus, putting in the damage so that HK can try and finish off with that Swift Strike coming on the Genji, functioning similar to what an Ashe would do in the standard double shield competition, poking them down with the Winston and the Soldier, and then trying to finish them off with the Genji. Whether they're successful in that, that's the really big question here. This is an untested composition. That damage has to be a ton from Zeus if they pull this one off. Akash waiting underneath right now, though, for the right time to strike. The high ground's already been given away, but Mind Your Manners aren't getting much more than that. There's going to be a big zap once they drop down, and in they go. Akash eats the accretion and falls! Gets found out in his little hidey hole, and that's the exact last thing you want to happen if you're 303. Now down a main tank. Luckily, you're running a spare, but you're also running out of room.
Well, I mean, Akash is on the Winston. He should be able to get back into the fight quickly enough, but Free cannot afford to lose the Orisa. That is something that is really going to hamper this team fight.
Yeah, they lost a lot of their damage early. They lost a lot of their health pool early. That just was not pretty for 303.
It feels like they've sort of anticipated a Pharah, When you put a soldier in, you are looking at aerial threat, either an Echo or a Pharah, and instead you're only finding double shield. And Soldier is just not effective at shooting through double shield. So all of this focus comes onto HK. He's got to make up for the damage lacking, and he's just not doing that right now.
Yeah, now on the high ground, they're running the exact same composition here, this time with a little bit more success poking away, but the health pools are dropping lower and lower. Without that AoE healing the Baptiste, they can only keep one person up at a time. Luckily, though, Greg is still alive on this Orisa somehow, but in the backline, off goes Biz, gets one, gets two with the blade, and I'll finish him off, but the damage is still there, and the team is still together for Mind Your Manners. They have not managed to separate any of the players away. This bunker is still nice and sad in the corner. The card is still continuing forward, Moxie.
Well, the bunker may be nice and sad in the corner, but 303's Esports ultimate economy door is looking anything but nice. It is in the absolute toilet right now. You just put in Primal, you just put in Blade, trying to contest that payload. It hasn't been able to move that far, but unfortunately all you've done is bolster MYM. They're going to be coming in with Sigma Flux and Supercharger, and you can't set up on the high ground because you're just going to be forced straight off it as soon as those deployables go down.
Yeah, they're going to try and take the high ground away, but luckily that Gravitic Flux, just like you mentioned, Moxie, it comes in handy when there's a Winston on the way. Akash falls for the first time in a fight yet again here. It's starting to become a bit of a pattern, one that 303 are definitely not liking. The bongos drop, the visors used, but there just isn't enough damage on 303 to take down anybody on Mind Your Manners.
The only way that Visor would have worked out and picked up a kill was if Alexio had Nano Boost. And that had to have been the play, but unfortunately Zeus got pressured down so much he was forced to use Tac Visor, and now he's been forced to swap onto the Ashe. But it's on point C. If you're 303 Esports, you can come back from this door. It's very easy to hold on this point because you do have access to that main road if you're able to win out one of these fights. And this is the big hinge. You have to win one of these fights, and then you have to punish MYM for 4 minutes.
I'll see if they can start out doing that right with this slightly newer composition, although a little bit old school. The tanks are separated away. Where are you going, Greg and Akash? They feed themselves to the wolves. The rest of their team's just going to fall after this. And the tank, I mean, I don't want to call it a tank line. They weren't even in front of their team.
They played the Sigma a bit like it was the Winston, and Sigma just does not have that mobility. He can't jump back to his team unless he's got that Sigma Flux online. But HK does have a Blade online, and you do need to start coming up with this door, and he's so close to that rally. This can be where you can come back.
You got the Blade trying to finish this off. Mind Your Manners still with the ultimate advantage in this fight. HG coming up just as big, though. Starscream falls off the map. Not sure how he got booped. Must have been Ani. If anything, defenders trying to find some sort of stabilization in the spawns. Look like they're going to be able to do it for him. Not if Blizz starts cleaning up their backline. Gets another before falling. Mind Your Manners make that one look way closer than it should have been.
Zeus 7% to Bob as well. 303 Esports, they just need a little bit more time. This coming in on that Ashe really allowed them to find a footing. But they have to hold on to this door for 3 minutes, and you can see they have to poke, they have to build up to ultimates. They can't allow MYM to build into a fair engagement, otherwise Stigma Flux is going to come online, Amplification Matrix is going to come online far faster.
Yeah, there's so many tools right now that Mind Your Manners could use to end this map, but you buy a little time. Not only is it going to help your ultimate economy, it's also going to push that cart back a good bit.
Yeah, Zeus just holding on to that Bob as MYM holding on to the spawn room doors for dear life right now. 303 getting very aggressive so they can just supercharge their ultimates to stand a fairer fight in this next engage in the hopes that they'll be able to come into ultimates at the same time.
Oh, but the Gravitic Flux comes out anyways, catches himself a nice 3, but not much more than that. The damage isn't followed up on. Alexio's now over onto the Baptiste. The amplified healing is still there. That amplification matrix is not where he wanted it to go. HK now into the backline. That is an open invite to take himself 3 players back to spawn.
But 303 have used so much that now if they want to make sure MYM can't put in this Blade, can't have Cal use that rally to bolster Business Life Force, you've got to drop something like Supercharger, or you've got to drop something like Amplification Matrix as soon as MYM connect on that main road. Either to pick yourself up a kill, or to buy yourself the space to make up for your missing member.
The space can be had by the Amplification Matrix, but you can't make up for that pick. Well, yes you can. Take down Cal. That's one way of doing it. now with the heals coming in, 303 can reset. Zeus is going to be the first man back, and you can start playing this game right. But with the pause coming in, this is going to be a little bit awkward for these teams whenever they respawn.
And I mean, one thing that's going to be extremely awkward is how you deal with Business Blade on the side of 303. Because Zeus going down early, it's a domino effect, and one that you don't necessarily feel the ramifications of in this current fight. It's going to be coming up in that next engagement. The Ashe goes down before Amplification Matrix gets popped. She misses out on the entirety of it. And you look at that ult charge, 56% may not be a lot, but when you have an Ashe that can hit her shots and is standing behind a Batiste amplification matrix, you can come up to your ultimate in the snap of her fingers. And that's something that you really need because Biz is going to be coming in with a blade. Cal can pop rally to make sure that the Genji actually survives using it. And if you look at Free or Free, they don't have a Sigma Flux. They don't have a Bob. They have nothing outside of immortality and a rally to try to keep themselves alive in this next fight.
Well, Immortality Field, Rally, and Prayers never held a team together up against a Genji like Biz. We'll see if they can do it now, though, and make a miracle happen. The Bob straight into the back line. They're going to be taking a ton of damage. Immortality Field already popped out. Now Biz knows what's the business. Into the back line he goes, but immediately taken down by HK. A huge pick here for 303, but they're not able to stabilize off of it.
Immortality Field's already been used. You don't have that lifeline. 303 are crumbling right now. It's these small little plays, though. They fall like pebbles and they just crash like a tsunami in the ocean. He's going to be coming in with a Sigma Flux, though, and that should be able to buy Zeus the time to get that Bob up, and that's where you'll be able to find kills.
That's what you really want, but at 97%, it's not there yet. They're literally just waiting for this cooldown to come off. They're not going to poke for the percentage. They don't want to peek with Zeus. They don't want to risk dying. Finally, the Bob's online. It's out of sight line of pretty much everyone on Mind Your Manners, though, who are going to just calmly walk back, use the Gravitic Flux to disengage, and now they can press the go button as Greg's taken down. They've got the man advantage. They got everything they need to win this fight.
HK's going to be so close to that blade. This is the decider, but he goes down!
Oh, that's not what you need from your star player, Genji. Towards the end of the cart they go. 27 seconds left on the clock. They don't want to see overtime right now. Zeus is trying to make him the Ashe living way longer than she ever had any right to, but the cart still progresses regardless. The ball swap comes in. It's all about the stalls now, Moxie.
But the blade's out. You've managed to buy yourself time, and HK coming in, hero of the hour, door. 303 are going to be able to recover this off the back of Greg just getting that spin cycle onto the payload, buying the time for HK and Zeus to come back in, and MYM don't get to touch. The payload stops.
Clutch. I mean, what a clutch play from HK. Greg came in on the wrecking ball just in time, mind you. I'm pretty sure everybody was off that cart except for him. The Ashe had already disengaged. That thing was moving. It had 3 players on. He got there just in time. Now, the attack, I think, is where this gets way more interesting. That Orisa Monkey composition, clearly, just throw it out the window. Forget about it. I will say it never happened. And now you can go back to running serious compositions on your attack, which is, I think, what sets the pace here. Of course, that's a really good distance for double shield, but 303 don't necessarily like running that all the time.
I mean, to defend the Orisa and being paired up with a Winston, it can work. In fact, if they come out with this on the attack, it's going to have to work. And you are going to be seeing it sort of similarly work to that Zarya. You have all of the threat that a dive and axe onto that backline when the Winston and the Genji comes in, but you also have that peel available for your backline. So if something like a Genji or a Tracer goes after the Batiste to try and force that immortality field out early, you've got the Orisa there acting the big old bouncer with Fortify and Halt to keep that Batiste safe, to make sure that precious utility is going to be there when an ultimate comes in, rather than an enemy player.
Yeah, I mean, it's fair. The backline's going to be protected, but their backline wasn't what was dying first in every fight. It was a Cash, who doesn't have a Zarya bubble to roll with anymore. And it's exactly why the composition didn't work on defense. On attack, I think maybe a little bit better. Cash can play around these walls. You're absolutely right. There's a way for the Winston to get in, but I think everything needs to be focused on this Winston. They didn't give him nearly enough attention on defense. Now moving in onto the attack, you drop down, use the high ground as cover, let HK kind of cycle in, find some damage, but as Annie goes down, there's nobody to give him a bubble to save his life.
And now there's no safe disengage tool. You don't have the speed boost. You're stuck eating the damage right now. And oh, Zeus has been caught out. You're not going to be able to stealth your way out of that one, my friend. -1 in sneak skill. Going to be able to get out, though. So 303 going to have to start coming in this kill feed door.
Well, they have to. That doesn't mean they're going to. Akash disengages into the back line. The Lucio gets caught out again here because he doesn't have a tank that's actually going to help him out. Greg has made his way up to the point, but it's cost you about 3 lives to get there. Good halt in, though. Akash into the back line. This is the best setup they've had the entire time, taking down the Brig, taking down the Baptiste, and now with the Primal Rage, they can really make it a party.
Yeah, they should be able to grab this point, and they'll still have H-Key Brooks Blade to try and spiral out this next team fight so they can set up on that high ground. And you can already see with Annie on that Lucio, they are just trying to make sure they occupy that one as quickly as possible. Because now you've got that point unlocked, you have to shut down the defense. When you're running up against an Orisa, when you're running up against a Sigma, especially on Blizzard World Point B, high ground becomes where everybody wants to be standing. Because if you're not in control of it, or you open yourself up to so much poke. Doesn't matter if you're running dive, doesn't matter if you're running Reinhardt, you will lose someone in a rotation.
Well, you lost someone already. H-Key falls. Akash is into the back line, building towards that next Primal, but you can't just rely on your Primal cooldown to win these fights.
I mean, it's going to be so hard as well for Akash to get back in. And it would work if you were running Alexio on this Ana, you would be able to charge it into Nano. Cool. But now you're going to have to be jumping into the high ground when you're already missing players.
I love this high ground hold, though. I mean, what's the dive going to do? It's got no space to move.
It can't. It can't get out of spawn. You're going to be exposing yourself immediately. You can't pop any of your cooldowns. But MYM aren't going to be too aggressive. They are making sure that they have a disengagement tool for when HK comes in with this blade.
That's a big tool. There's Gravitic Flux that you mentioned. Alexio has to use the Immortality Field now, but with that out, this means that Mind Your Manners can try and come back in the fight. HK only managed to get one. The health bars are low on both sides, but 303 are the ones finishing off the kills and putting them in the feed, starting to finally progress this card through the choke point.
Blade didn't necessarily need to pick up kills, it just needed to buy the space for the dive to actually get out of spawn. And Starscream unfortunately uses the Sigma Flex just a little bit too early and on the wrong targets at that as well. He puts it onto the Baptiste who's coming out of the spawn room along with the rest of the team. He doesn't save it for the Genji who's blading his backline. And now 303 can go for that high ground occupation and he's going to have that sign barrier so you have a little bit more sustainability on your side.
Zeus is on the low ground. He can't actually see this team to shoot them. All the damage has to come from Akash. All the high ground control has to come from him as well. Waiting for that health bar to drop low, but a nice leap. And the combo into the melee is going to finish people off. Drops him down to the low ground to feed them to Zeus, who then is going to take a ton of damage. Mind Your Manners are more than happy to play this kind of game, but they've been separated away from the rest of their bunker. So the longer this goes, the better it is for 303.
Pascal already down, the Brig following suit. MYM, they can try and draw this out as long as possible, but right now that's not going to be for very long. Danhad doing everything it can to try and equalize, but this is really going to be the playmaker of this blade.
Oh, I love this, though. Flank visor from Zeus. The blade's going to scare him off, though, and rightfully so, as Biz takes him down. Searching for more here. The Baptiste off in the other arcade room. They know this pick is available. Dropped low is the dash there, just barely edging out the kill. Biz finishes him off, and now is searching for more of these 303 players.
HK Broke is going to be coming in with the blade. This is the one thing that 303 are going to be putting all of their hopes in. Greg especially going to be coming into the supercharge to give it a little bit, you know, importance, a little bit more threat. But Starscream is still holding on to the Sigma Flex and Denthead. Its Bob is still going to be there as well. 2 methods of peel instead of just that immortality field coming out from Pascal means this Genji has to just hold on and be patient.
Patience has never been a word in HK's vocabulary. Nope, it absolutely is. And Gravitic Flux stops him. No, it doesn't catch the Genji. He gets 2. He can get even more here, but Mind Your Manners have ended the fight already.
There's just too much peel. They used so much, but it's enough to win them that fight. And now they can set up again on this high ground and poke away again as half of this dive tries to get in close and close that distance, because the Winston can jump, but he won't have that Zarya bubble. He doesn't even have the Diva defense matrix to try and keep him safe. He has to have Primal when he jumps in.
Well, it's the same struggle we saw on the first point. The Winston can move forward, but it takes 3 fights for the Orisa to actually close that gap, not to mention if she goes down. Also, the Lucio hasn't been playing with the Orisa, hasn't been helping her move forward quickly. No, this time the Orisa actually is forward with the team. This is another great engagement from 303. Can they follow up on all the damage that Akash is doing in this doorway? Dropping the bongo, increasing that even more as Gaichki dives straight into the backline, takes down the main tank, takes down a lot of the defenses of Mind Your Manners as 303 set themselves up to win the fight.
Oh, they split the team as well. MYM's concentration half go for the payload contest. The other half stay in the side room. You do lose your soldier, but you do manage to get that second checkpoint. And now you've got an extended time bank. You can try and break open
Oh, that's mean.
point C, and you've even managed to stagger out a couple members of MYM who are just going to be waiting. They're going to be biding their time because they're going to be coming in with something that's very powerful if you wait just a little bit longer. Those supercharges are going to be up, and my goodness, it's something Annie has to be terrified for, because Samara can save you through a Genji Blade, but not really a supercharged one. It just rips away your health bar.
Well, the fight comes in early, and like you mentioned, that blade is immediately dropped here. HK into the back line, slicing and dicing, make himself some Mind Your Manners sashimi, but only gets one on his way. Zeus has to finish it off. Akash now down, though. You like a lot of the engagement tools, so you're going to have to back away as Mind Your Manners continue to take space with their double shield.
They're going to use the rally. If things get even worse, they've got the supercharges to go back onto, but they don't even need to use them, and that means 303 are going to be in dire straits for this next approach because they're going to be so exposed when they come on that main road. And with only 60 seconds left, you can't afford to disengage. You have to try and get as much space as you possibly can.
Well, you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. It's either the bot or the gravitic flux, and I don't think 303 feel like eating another one of the latter quite yet, but they're going to have to move into it eventually as Mind Your Manners aren't done with this fight. Halt into the gravitic flux, catches one, catches two, 40 seconds on the clock, but Mind Your Manners just used a lot.
Oh, it's the wrong time for 303 to drop Amplification Matrix, though. Alexia tries to use it to make sure none of them get staggered, that with that 30-second gong going, they'll have a full team to push, but now you don't have it to guarantee yourself space. Instead, you've got to rely on Akash coming in with that Primal, buying you enough time, enough estate for HK to build up that blade.
Well, the Primal's won every single fight it's been used in prior to this. If Akash can do what he's done prior and live up to the history, they absolutely will make it past her, knocking everybody off of the high ground. Down they go into the welcoming arms of HK and Zeus. We're going to be taking down those kills. They have HK's blade as well as a bongo to try and finish this one off, but it's in overtime, Moxie.
You've got to hold on to that blade. You don't want to use it in this next fight because MYM will be able to come out. This isn't the last fight of this round, though.
No, but the Ant Matrix starts things off beautifully, taking down Starscream, staggering out the players of Mind Your Manners, rapidly barreling towards the end. A game that Mind Your Manners thought they had locked down, now set to be ended by 303, who still have the blade, the sound barrier, everything's online. They might not even have to use it as Cart crosses without even a contest from Mind Your Manners.
Blade comes out from 303 first. They were able to let HQ build up to that blade, and they had the game sense to hold on to it, to know that there was going to be another fight after the one that they were currently in. And a lot of these engagements, a lot of the reason for why we see the victor pop up on the screen is having that game sense, is knowing that yes, you do need to win the fight you're currently in, but you also need to make sure that you're properly set up, especially when it comes to overtime pushes. You cannot afford to disengage. You cannot afford to give in space. You just have to press forward with aggression, and that's exactly what 303 come with.
Now, we've talked a little bit about the final fight, but I'm going to give my opinion, and then I want your opinion on what we thought of that composition, because that was a really wacky composition we saw with the Orisa Winston. And frankly, I still am not convinced by it. You won the map, but I do think a lot of it was off of individual skill. Of course, HK's a nut on the Genji. You've got Zeus playing Ashe, which is a character we've seen him pop off multiple times on. Akash is on the Winston. We talked about what the Primal did. Every time it got popped, it won them a fight. The Orisa had some impact in when they were able to get it up to the front line, when they were finally able to get it up to the front line. Of course, it's going to be doing some work, but outside of that, I don't think the composition functioned as one whole group so much as just individual people making plays multiple times, which you could do and you could say for any composition in Overwatch.
I mean, you hit the nail on the head pretty perfectly, though. Compare how that composition were able to run for point C and look at how long it took them to break open point B. There's two major differences to how both of those parts of the map are set out. And it is that one is a little bit wider and one's a little bit more narrower. when Annie was confined on that Lucio to playing with the team, to making sure that the Orisa was constantly within that speed boost buff, that was when
Hmm.
that composition really worked out. Because the Orisa was there in the front line, and she was so close to the back line as well that she was there as the peel, so that when the Genji from MYM Biz tried to get close, he just couldn't. He was torn down, and we saw HK was just cycling for blades, getting them up so much quicker, 20% pretty much ahead of Biz for the majority of that point C push. And it's all because the Orisa is there completely circumventing Biz's impact on that Genji. But then you look at how the Orisa played on point B, and it was slow and it was sluggish, and you took so much damage
Hmm.
from push. You lost people early on in rotations, and you found yourself split off into side rooms and shepherded into damage that you didn't want to take, all because Annie just was not playing with that tank.
Well, they figured it out in the end. I do think the speed boost was the key factor there. The Orisa getting into the fight as fast as possible, clearly the thing that allowed them to take that final point. And whenever they did get the Orisa for it, the points before. Mind your manners, though. They're running full meta. This is a matchup that, theoretically, meta this and that. They should win. They clearly made some mistakes along the way. And I think a lot of that had to do with their ultimate economy. I mean, it was very clear in point C when they went to push into spawn. I mean, yes, you got the kills, but you used 3 ultimates to stagger people back into spawn with 30 seconds still on the clock. I'm going to say they did it to themselves there.
You have to be very careful when you're on the defense on Blizzard World or even any of these sort of like escort slash hybrid maps, because you do have advantage, but you can throw it away if you go a little bit too aggressive. And Rialto is one such map, duh, because you
Hmm.
look at Point C, you look at how well it's defensively favored when you get to that last third of this map. You've got the respawn room so much closer if the payload stops anywhere near the inside museum. And even better, if you're able to win a single fight on that part of point C, you get full control of choke. You just have to be very careful that you don't move past it. You have to know where the line is that you just simply cannot cross. And that was something that MYM they stepped over. They didn't just step over it, Door and Blizzard World, they completely bounded over it. So looking into this next map, I want to see a little bit more self-control. I want to see this team show that they understand certain points where they can't go and where they should make sure that they're constantly keeping behind. And I think that's going to be extremely obvious on point A because this has a couple of stand here, X marks the spot, team fight begins right now.
Mox, I'm speechless. I don't know what to say. They've
They're
done it. They
coming out
actually
with it.
locked it. They actually locked it.
They did.
I feel like we're allowed to call it hog and like yeah, we know what it is. Everybody
We
knows
know
what
what
it's
it is.
called.
We know what it
You
is.
guys know what it's called. I don't know if we're allowed to say it, but it's got a name. Greg is
Well,
gonna
it's
look
not
for
got
environmental kills
railing.
though.
It's what Rialto's got. Greg's just going here. He's got health and safety regulations, and he is just ripping them all up and dumping them in the river water, along with what he
Ooh.
hopes will be MYM. But Dan Head kicking things off early with a lovely pick onto HK, and Annie does not want to go for that res when it would have just hit that shot.
That was a valiant attempt, Akash, at booping them off the bridge. But now that they have 0 opportunity for environmental kills, this team has lost 90% of its potency. Akash can go into the back line, drop in over top here, do all he wants. There's not that much follow-up damage. Mind your man is just going to happily sit in and behind their shields, pick down your tanks one at a time, focus down your Ashe, continue strolling through Rialto with this card. Or should I say sailing, as 320 ticks over on the clock. They're sitting pretty.
It's such a risky composition to come out with, and it's not going to be seeing a composition like that very long. Greg going to be sticking with the Roadhog, 42% to that whole hog. Can definitely be used to slow MYM down, but Cash going to be going to the Orisa, so you will have the halts, you will have the follow-up hooks, but you still don't have anything to contest Danhead's Widow.
Yeah, you do have the titular halt hook combo, but you don't really have that much in the way of shields. You do have to cower in these side lanes. Great anti-nade, though. Connects onto a few. Can they follow it up is a big question. It looks like no. They can't get past those shields. Cannot give Zeus the sight lanes that they need to finish these ones off. As mind your manners, pick them off one at a time. They're going to break through A.
Unfortunately, when you're running Mercy, when you're running Ana, once upon a time, though, that would be enough. Once upon a time, we would see those two as main supports. But Mercy has since fallen from favor. 55 healing per second is just not going to be enough, and Ana as well has received her fair share of nerfs that have been hitting her pretty hard. 5 down, less healing per second. Really, you don't think it's that much, but when you're looking down at Genji, Orisa, Sigma, you realize that damage doing enough.
It's worth noting, though, even though they swapped over compositions, their ultimate game, not too bad right now. They've got plenty to try and counters. If they could survive Biz's ultimate, which they absolutely won't, the Super Blade comes out and cuts my words right in half.
There's nothing. You're not running that Batiste, you're not running a Lucio, not even a Zenyatta right now can keep you alive. Alexi's going to be sticking on this Ana for a little bit. You do have this nano boost, but you're going to have to put it onto Zeus's buff. That's the only thing that can act as a doorstop, the only thing that can provoke as much as a threat to get Pascal to use the Immortality Field.
Well, the Immortality Field, like you mentioned, already out here. Alexio, though, has used the nano boost, trying to put in as much damage as possible. It's just not there. Mind your manners, playing behind their double shields, waiting for their opportunities, and taking these players down in the side lanes.
Alexio does manage to get Biz out of the way, and remember, Free should have the faster respawns, but they don't have the advantage of numbers, and now MYM looking extremely quick on this Rialto push, looking to get a couple of stragglers as well to secure themselves this next fight off of straggle picks alone.
Straggle picks are not what you need. 5 minutes on the clock, Moxie. That's insane.
And Pascal's got amplification matrix that you can just drop on main. Free have to be so careful about how they approach this, because if they lose a singular person before Akasha's supercharges come out, they've got to give up ground yet again, and sooner or later they're going to give up ground to give.
Well, if there's anything 303 are doing at, it's losing exactly one person before a fight. HK goes down, as has traditionally happened in their games. However, they're really good at pulling it back as well. So with the amplification matrix, they go in, boost that dynamite right on up. The damage is big, but the Gravitic Flux is even bigger. Starscream catches everybody while burning down here. Gosh, what are you doing up in the front line, my friend? Now down another tank. 303 are losing their resources as Mind Your Manners slowly barrel forward.
PHK's so close to this blade, though. We saw it pull out all the stops in Blizzard World. He has to do the same.
Oh, but he can't. Denhead's already shut him down, doing what he does best. The respawns are coming in, though, for 303, and like you mentioned, Point C so hard to take. Akash and Greg are both back up. They've got their double shield all set up nicely in the corner. Zeus has free sightlines and a bongo, taking people down 1, 2, 3, 4 at a time. And Mind Your Manners finally have to put on the brakes.
It's so hard to full push that payload all the way for Rialto because the respawn room is just so close. And now Free Esports, they've got the advantage in all of these engagements because they're the ones who get to poke. So the tables, they've been flipped. MYM will be coming into ultimates faster, sure, but if Free are able to play their cards right, if they're able to utilize this choke properly and get someone out of the way first, they can just press ignition.
303 made their way forward, though they've bought a ton of space with this fight. Yes, they give up Greg, but they can back up, disengage, and try and get the Cash. He got caught in the side lane again here. Gonna be taken out, gonna be staggered. No, Zeus saves his life. Oh my goodness, what a shot from the Ash. Then trades it out for Annie, but they still have Alexio alive. They can end this fight early. 303 still stand a chance. Of course, the spawns are coming in, but Mind Your Manners are all up in the kill feed.
They just have to buy time if you're Free, HK and Zeus. They're the only ones that can save you right now, though.
Well, with the Bob in, the damage is there, but the current presence isn't. 303 go down, 248 on the clock, significantly better than the 5 minutes they were facing down, but definitely not a pretty sight.
There's some real problems with this composition, and unfortunately, a lot of it stems from an out of position Orisa. And I think we're seeing the difference as well when you don't have Annie on that Lucio. So it feels like there's a little bit of a complacency going on through that. What you could get away with slightly more in Blizzard World has now just become completely punishable on Rialto. And MYM have identified that every time they see that Orisa alone, or every time they see that Orisa trying to disengage, because they know there isn't a Lucio there to just speed boost her out of danger, they jump on her hard. And they use that tiny little weakness to just completely pull this composition apart.
It's also a different Orisa player. Greg seemed a bit more comfortable. Cash played it towards the end of the map, and they had Greg on the Sigma, I believe. But as far as Orisa playing goes, Akash seems to want to play a lot more aggressive, wants to hold his ground and rely on his healers. But the rest of the team doesn't want to hold that far forward. There's some real dissonance going on in how they actually want to be playing this matchup, and that's expected when you bring in somebody new to the team, whether it be a ringer, whether it be a new pickup. They're playing a little bit differently. When that's your main tank, that can completely change how you want to play a map. Now, though, back onto the double shield they go, hoping it ends a little bit better for him here.
Den heads onto the Widowmaker again, though. Keep your eye on Zeus. Went down first the last time. Cannot go down again. You can't lose to this Widowmaker. And she's going to be so hard to get to, though. Behind 2 layers of shielding and bounded by a Brigitte, the Genji's going to be so hard to get in.
They will continually lose space for the Widowmaker, though. Denhead's running out of room to actually work with here as Greg searches around the back line. You gotta be careful doing this. One halt, one accretion, and you are done. So the rest of the team come with him, though. I love this from 303. Wrapping not just the signal, but having players there to back up, because that's, of course, a very, very risky maneuver, although it hasn't really gained you anything in the neutral here.
It's also very telegraphed, so you have to have that heal coming from the rest of the team, otherwise Denhead is just going to be waiting for its moment before dinking you in the head.
I mean, Deadhead's always the real threat, isn't he? Whenever it comes to mind your manners, you look for this man to pop off, and he does! Takes down Zeus, opens up the fight, and now so much less damage for 303. It's either win it now or get burnt to down by the DPS of Mind Your Manners.
Say it so many times, though. An uncontested Widowmaker is a Widowmaker hitting her shots, and Deadhead's already got the ultimate. Because look at where this fight is. It's on the payload. It's scrappy. It's frontline focus. H-key, no. Denhead goes for the side angle, and that's just click the head. Zeus on this Ashe. You can contest the Widowmaker, but right now, Denhead's team are providing all of the space it needs to pop off. And Zeus's team is just focused on getting the tanks out of the way, meaning the Widowmaker gets free reign. And on Rialto, when you're separated by a courtyard, that can't happen.
303 go for the split push, but instead of leaving the signal on the side, they pincer in and collapse. Mind Your Manners have a beautiful disengage with the Gravitic Flux. Follow up on it with a beautiful Swift Strike from Biz, hitting absolutely everybody, finishing off one. Now it's Deadhead's turn to farm. Gets himself one more onto Zeus as Mind Your Manners still holding on to this second corner.
There's just no contest right now on that Widowmaker. And when you don't have a contest on that Widowmaker, you have a constant threat chipping away at your health bars, forcing Alexio into using stuff that he really doesn't want to be using.
Give this man a break already.
Let this man an Overwatch League contract. Or at least let him go up against Bren. Denhead has been popping off all day on Rialto. And when you don't have that contest, you can see HK is the one meant to be going after the Widowmaker, meant to be drawing away the attention, but he's just not able to get close.
Oh, and the Gravitic Flux whiffed big time from Greg. Does catch one, though, and that's seemingly enough. Not enough to overcome Denthead and his unmissing shots, though. As Mind Your Manners even up the score, but they use a lot of ultimates to do it.
1 minute left, though. If you're 303, you've got to be able to break past this courtyard, otherwise Denhead is just going to reign supreme in all of these engages.
Well, they haven't made it any further in this fight than they have in the past. They're going to have to use these ultimates to open things up. I'm looking at one man and one man only right now, and that is H-Keybroke to come in with one of those signature blades and finish things off. But Denhead's used the visor, spies him down, and takes him down. Pascal by the head, ending H-Key's life. And with that, the rest of 303's hopes and dreams are going to crumble. 30 seconds on the clock, and this double shield composition doesn't feel like it's working for him, Moxie.
This is going to be so close to the bar, but that is all you'll have, and with, well, 20 seconds left on the clock, and looking at the ultimates that they're going to be there for MYM, it is such a huge ask. Greg is going to go onto the Diva just so you can try and defense matrix all of the damage that's going to be coming away. Akash onto the Reinhardt, that shield going to be so very, very fragile.
Well, this push is going to be exactly that, fragile. When the brawl comes in, there's not much to stop the damage. It has to end quickly when that Reinhardt engages. If he ever gets to engage, the Gravitic Flux holding him off. Blaze comes in with another blade. Deadhead doing Deadhead things. OT takes down Mind Your Manners. It's match point, but they came to play.
You know, one thing that I would have loved to see coming out from Brigo Free when that Widowmaker proved to be the bane of their existence? Hammond. We've seen that they want to go for that very sort of Frank and dive composition where you have half a front line and you have half a dive composition. Hammond would have been able to close the distance, and that was the majority of 303's problems. Every time that they tried to get close to the Widowmaker, Denthead would just turn. And because you're a squishy, all it needs is to land one headshot, fully charged up onto your face, and you're gone. Hammond becomes a lot harder for a Widowmaker to deal with. He's able to close the distance. He's able to make the fight actually fair. And I think it's something that would have allowed Free to breach that courtyard. And once you pass that courtyard, the Widowmaker impact goes away significantly on Rialto.
Yeah, I would have actually liked to see the same composition as Blizzard World, which I don't like the composition, but I think it works better on Rialto than it did on Blizzard World, right? That Winston can jump up to the high ground, the Ursa is constantly going to be moving forward, the sightlines aren't nearly as long or wide as they used to be outside of maybe the courtyard there, but then you still have the Winston to jump on top of the Widowmaker, make her life a living hell. I think it's an option they could have gone to. I think they really tried to force that double shield, and the team synergy, especially with Akash being either new or ringing, just isn't quite there enough to be running it. Here on Temple of Anubis, though, things change a lot, and I think 303 are going to be feeling a lot more comfortable.
I mean, you've got to, though, be prepared to deal with this Widowmaker. Now that Denhead has seen how much impact it was able to get away with, and not only how much impact, Door, how much completely uncontested space that you were given, then you have to know that that's one thing you're going to come out on. Either the Widowmaker or the Ash, where it has, just a little bit more across the board value. Widowmaker finds a lot, yes, when she's hitting those heads. If you're not able to connect those shots, if you're only finding double shield, you are playing against, well, less than one player. You're not pulling your weight, and you are going to be feeling that in the long run when it comes to ultimate charge and when it comes to that power struggle. And so if you're free, I'm hoping that we get to see dive, but I'm hoping that we get to see full dive. Because you can try to run Zarya Winston, or you can try to run Orisa Winston, whatever sort of mishmash composition you want to go for that tank frontline. But a lot of the time we see when you go for that 50% of one thing, 50% of the other thing, you're cutting 50% of your value. The dive only has 50% of an impact, and therefore it doesn't force out Immortality Field soon enough to actually guarantee yourself a pick and let you move out safely. And when you have that backline, yes, you've got an Orisa, or yes, you've got a Zarya bubble, but that is very fragile, and it's also instantaneous. It's there for a couple of seconds, and then it's gone. And that sets the stage for the enemy DPS to just come in and mop the floor with your face.
Yeah, I think they have a very important decision to make here, right? I mean, we could put it between a couple things. It's probably either going to be full dive, or you run the Zarya Winston and go with something a little bit more Chinese in nature, or you could still stick with the double shield. 303, though, they've run the same thing all night. Outside of Denthead going over to the Widowmaker, which on Rialto just kind of makes sense, especially when you have a player like Denthead. I would not mind seeing them swap it up. Maybe a Torbjorn here, maybe a Junkrat. Both of them are fairly effective into dive, and I think that'd be a good way for them to put another map on the board. Because remember, 303, we're talking about their shortcomings and them not playing their compositions right and how rough their composition was on Blizzard World, but they're still winning maps, Moxie.
Yeah, and by the skin of their teeth, but they are absolutely winning them. And I
That's
think
right.
it goes to show when they know what they're running against, when they can identify the win conditions that are available for their opponents, this fight becomes a lot more even. And we see a different team emerge. They struggled on Rialto. They sort of just fed themselves into the shredding machine on Rialto. So I've got my fingers crossed that we're going to be seeing the free or free esports that we got to see on Lijiang instead of the free or free esports that we got to see on that last map heading into Anubis. And I like to see Torbjorn, I like to see Junkrat, but for now we're only going to be getting to see one of those. Biz going to be coming out on the Junkrat and paired up with Denhead on the Ash. This is a lot of spam damage, and this can be extremely hard for a dive to deal with as well, because you are going to be big meaty health bars who rely on mobility, and Biz on that Junkrat with that trap with those mines can just make that not a thing. And then you've got Denthead's coach gun. The Ash can make sure that when the Winston comes through, oh hey look, a cooldown, you're down on the ground and now you're dead.
They've also got Zeus back on the Soldier, which I don't think really ever worked. They cracked A open with it, but I think that was off of a Primal Rage from Akash, which again have been insane. Zeus has been a nut on the Ash. I don't see why you aren't running it with it, especially if the shields are going to have to reposition for the dive. There's a lot of opportunities for Dynamites, but they're going to be running it anyways. I'm curious to see how the Orisa actually moves in here, though.
Well, Annie is on that Lucio. So this is something that I do like to see. You're just going to go for that speed push. Try and get as quickly as you can into the side room. Close that distance as soon as possible to negate a lot of the impact of the spam damage, because when Junkrat is far away from a break, he's very good, but when it becomes a little bit shorter, he's very bad.
That was one of the most interesting dives I've ever seen come out from a 303, but they didn't lose anybody doing it. They did lose an Immortality Field, however, which is a massive tool. They're slowly inching Greg forward into the mini room. They go slowly moving towards the point. Is the Orisa. If they can not lose players, rather, on the way there, they might be able to win this fight. But my god, Mox, that's a long way to not lose players.
Oh, and Alexia is going to be going down last as well. 303. It's going to be a real struggle to get close to this composition, and you can already see MYM doing everything they can to just increase the distance. Whether it's Denhead going up onto the high ground above the point, Pascal joining them, making sure that when the dive comes through, it's only going to catch a couple of players rather than the entire team. You are always going to have Biz in the background spamming in just little bits of damage to build up to that tire.
Huge thing to note, though, Akash has Primal Rage. If history repeats itself, they can rely on this man's monkey to pull out a fight. That's so much of what it's relied on prior. It's just that individual skill, and in he comes thinking he can clean things up. Off the high ground they go. That amplification matrix now made completely useless. The team being separated away. The bunker not exactly getting to bunker, but they do regroup, take down Akash, and now this is where you want to be fighting. But with Deadhead down, that's a lot of the damage gone. Both of these teams doing their best to give away picks right now, but 303 are the ones who have made the more progress.
They're in such a juicy spot as well at MYM if you have a bleeding Genji, but HK has to be so very patient. Biz has not popped that tire, Pascal not put in Immortality, but you've got to wait.
Oh, he finally decides it's time, though. Catches the tire as well of Biz as he was casting it. Take down one player. Gravitic Flux to re-engage from Starscream, but things are getting dicey here for Mind Your Manners as their visor has been used. Everything's out from 303, but it's still not enough, Moxie.
It's not enough damage. It's a soldier. Door, you've got to get through 2 layers of shield first. And that's just not going to do it. This is going to be swapping onto the Ashe, but with 1 minute 23 seconds, you've got 2 decent pushes left. You will be able to build up to an ultimate if you're able to hit your dynamites, and especially if Greg's going to be able to pop those superchargers down, but it's a cash that this group are going to be looking to. This Primal has to knock at least a couple members of MYM off this high ground.
Well, he's almost certain to pop it instantly. Denthead, though, in the backline, not getting picked off. Akash's health is too low. He has to leave before he can do anything. He's made a little bit of space here. At least they have 5 players alive. They've taken out Pascal. Main heal's now down, but Denhead's popping off yet again on the Ashe here as Starscream and Pair start to move forward, start to take that space back that 303 worked so hard to gain.
Alexio is the one that they need right now. Amplification Matrix is the only thing that you can use to secure yourself room. Akash, it's desperation hours. He's onto the Hammond, but MYM have adjusted. They're not setting up on the high ground. They're making sure that if a dive comes through, they're not going to be separated, or they're all just going to be in this small room.
Well, the dive Moxie has come in, but it's got nothing to bolster it. The Amplification Matrix is almost certainly going to have to be used for healing, maybe a little bit of damage. Mind your manners, though. They're getting towards that Great Flux. They're getting towards the Bob. That titular 7th member so close. Denthead dropped low, though nearly taken out, but it's Biz who ends up getting taken out. Now the damage cut in half here. 303 have an opportunity to move in, but Denthead's still in the way, still on the Ashe, and still popping people.
Oh, HT goes down 20% to the ultimate. That's huge. 303 were looking to that DPS player, needing him to hit that ultimate, but it's MYM who are occupying the high ground, who are occupying the point, and who have all of the control. And there were moments, there were these flashes, these little sparks where 303 really came alive with that dive. When Akash was going in with Primal and we were seeing him pop it to just completely negate all of the impact of Pascal's Amplification Matrix. And then after those moments, you would have very small sort of like seconds of just space, of silence, where there's no follow-up. And this is the massive big con written in capitals and underlined at least 3 times on that list of pros and negatives when you're running half and half. You don't have that follow-up. You don't have something like a Diva or a Hammond to come through so that you can capitalize on the moment, on the space that the Winston has created. Instead, you were relying on the Orisa to be able to get into position to poke or pull someone out of their composition and get a pick, and that is so very hard to set up.
Well, what is easy to set up is double shield. 303 have chosen something a lot more straightforward to run, especially on this map. It's great at defending here. Zeus is a nut. on the Ashe. But again, you have to pull into question that tank performance. Akash and Greg have not had the greatest synergy. I think individually they're both great, but synergistically, they haven't shown up. Here, though, it's a little bit more straightforward. Just kind of put your shield down on the high ground and let your DPS go to work. So let's see if they can do that.
It's not just put your shield up on the high ground as well, it's the halts. This is where we're going to see this team, whether they can sink or whether they will swim magnificently into a full hold door. If Akash can have those halts, if the communication is that, you can just chip away at this composition player by player, separate them and push them into spawn.
Well, the halt connects, but there's no accretion to follow it up. There was a Swift strike, but that was it. Again, that's energy from 303. We can call it into question, but it's not done yet. 3:30 on the clock here. Backing up into the halt, doesn't get anything, but it's going to be the dynamite from Zeus that does miss, and that's what they needed to connect. That's what they're looking for. Those halt combos are just not there. That's the core of this double shield composition. They're losing so much space. 303 own this high ground right now. Immortality Field's already been forced out. Mind your manners are pushing straight through 303. They don't give a damn. Now Deadhead, he's got himself an Ant Matrix. He's got himself a couple of bodies, and he's got 303 set up to lose on Anubis.
HK is so close to that blade though. This is the thing. This is the play that 303 can make to come back from the edge.
Well, if the Genji can live, they can get there. He's got the blade online. How much does he actually get, though? Dashes through, immediately taken up and out. Pascal turning into a bit of a DPS in and of his own right. Immortality Field now down, though. Nothing to really stop Akash from coming in and contesting other than the Bob that's now in his way, dealing a ton of damage. Point beginning to take over here for Mind Your Business. And they're looking to send themselves on to a game point. Spawns are up for 303. They'll get a couple more touches on the point, but someone has to do something, Moxie.
And you can see Alexia's onto the Lucio. He should be able to tag back in with the rest of the team, but no!
Not even.
It was so close. That was, what, an inch off the point? Right on the corner? Oh, that is so painful if you're 303. I mean, if you look at it realistically, you had just used a boatload of ultimates. You'd used your blades, you'd used your Bob, Amplification Matrix thrown in as well. It would take an absolute miracle to be able to stabilize, but we've seen this team pull out miracles before. You've got to think back to Blizzard World. You've got to remember how close to the brink they really were when they pulled it right out of the jaws of defeat. But unfortunately, they're just not able to relive that magic. And I think we are seeing a little bit of that disconnect that we sort of both feared coming out, because you can trace the beginning of that fight where it all starts to go very, very wrong. And it all begins with Akash putting an Orisa shield down and then walking straight out of it. And your Orisa was going for a very aggressive play, and if you had a team that followed through on that and tried to move forward and sort of followed the Orisa as if she was a Reinhardt leading the charge, then you would have been able to maybe try and pull that into kills. But instead, your Batista's forced into a very tough spot. Your Orisa is out of composition, out of position, and you have to get her back in. You have to get her safely back in, because if she goes down, it's all over. And you either put in extreme amounts of healing and you only focus on her, or you throw down a 25-second deployable and hope that someone like HK will be able to come in with a blade in that time when it's still on cooldown to be able to just clean up that fight. And that's what Alexia opts into. Immortality Field comes out, but it's so early. And it's gone in seconds. And then so too is the Orisa, and then so too is the rest of the team.
Yeah, I think this composition fundamentally just doesn't work. We talked about it after map 2. Blizzard World, every single player popped off. Zeus was going off. HK was repeatedly getting two-man blades. Akash was ending fights with just Primal Rage. But then you put it into a position where maybe not everybody pops off. Maybe HK's not doing that. Maybe Akash isn't getting those Primal Rage. Maybe Zeus isn't popping heads. And I'll have you know, none of those happened on Temple of Anubis. And you see what happens. The composition just doesn't function. It's so reliant on your players playing their signature heroes perfectly. And you can't expect that of your team every map. Here on Await says, I want to see a return to form. Go to Comfort. We saw them run the Chinese dive in their previous match against Regen. Yes, you lost 0-3, but I was watching them. You and I were watching them, talking about it as it was happening. Their bubble cooldown, their ability rotation was so much better on that. Akash and Greg look like teammates who had been playing together for a while. Everything was coordinated when they played the dive and when they played the normal dive. I don't like this Orisa composition, and it's shown even more. Then they swap over to the double shield, which they look even more uncomfortable on. Nothing is connecting, and so much is just thrown up in the air by these tanks. I think they just go to the one composition that, for whatever reason, they've been avoiding, and it may be just because they feel nervous after losing to Regen on it.
It's gotta be that. Surely this is a composition that we've seen a lot of teams go for. We've seen that Free know how to run it, but they got 3-0'd when they tried to run it, Doran. So you don't want to, after immediately not managing to pull a single map against an opponent, go for the same composition where an opponent just sort of blitzed through you because it has cracks. This is the reason why we're not seeing every team come into it. When you run that Winston, when you run that Zarya into double shield, it is very temperamental because you have to immediately have an impact. You immediately have to come in with a kill or full side immortality field, otherwise the dive has failed. And it takes so very long to set up. It doesn't matter if you're EU or NA, you are just going to be posturing for about 25% of the entire round, making sure that everyone is in position. Because if you sacrifice that little extra seconds, and you lose someone before the dive properly hits, then that's 30 seconds wasted where they could be building up to an ultimate, where you could be chipping away at the health bar, and you cannot be doing a lot of impact. Sure, you might not be able to hit your shots, you might only be finding double shield, but you're still going to be getting more ult charge than if you're waiting in spawn room.
Well, there's one thing I'll say. 303, if you're watching, you're probably not. I hope you're not. But if you are, I'll tell you what feels a lot worse than just an 0-3. It's an 0-3 and then getting reverse swept out of the losers bracket. And that's exactly what they're facing down. 303 have lost all the momentum they had previously in this series. Yes, they were the ones to take the control point map. And I do think that is going to come into play here. I think the brawl compositions do tend to go in their favor. I think if we see Mind Your Manners lock in the Genji Doomfist again, I think that's almost a guaranteed point given away to 303. So I think there's definitely some foothold here to work with because Mind Your Manners can't run that double shield everywhere like they've been wanting to.
Well, unfortunately, though, for Free, it's University that pops up first. And out of all
Oof.
of the maps on Oasis, this is the least dive friendly. You can still run the Winston, he can still get up into that backline because of the way that this point is set up, right? The point itself is extremely open. There's a lot of high ground, so you can occupy that to get cleave damage. But there are a big couple of no-nos, and a lot of them are in that side room off to the side of the point. The Winston cannot put himself into that, otherwise he just doesn't have mobility. And without the mobility, you are not going to be able to get safely back to the rest of your team. So it's much more likely that we are going to be seeing no Reinhardt, but instead a Reinhardt.
Well, Alexio back to the Moira. We talked about this choice earlier, and it worked out for them earlier. The big thing to watch here. What does Greg go to? It's going to be the Diva. What does Zeus go to here? I want to see damage. I want to see the Reaper again. It worked beautifully the previous time that they ran it, and that's absolutely going to be the pick. Denthead as well, though. This time not on the Doomfist, over to the Reaper. Big difference here. Mei versus Genji. HK is going to have to putting out continuous value, or else Akash is going to have a real hard time in this Reinhardt 1v1. Zeus lurking along the back line, nearly getting frozen up, has to use a Wraith form already, but it's 303 in control of the point. Mind Your Manners have to find a wall, have to find some way out of the side room before they're in a world of trouble, but it's Akash who's in a world of trouble, tries to charge straight into the Fortify. Nothing's going to be keeping you alive out of that one. Now without a main tank to hold, 303 have to get their way right back to spawn.
Free not running that Batiste. There's one thing that saves MYM that keeps that composition alive, and it's a deployable with a 25-second cooldown. Alexia will be coming in with Coalescence, but Pascal's already got Amplification Matrix, which means you're going to hear Free try and get aggressive with their ult, and Pascal's just going to drop that window, and no one is going to want to walk anywhere near it, and that Coalescence is going to find nothing.
HK has charged up himself a Dragon Blade, though. They've been big historically. They've been big every time on the control point, but he only gets one. It is Starscream, though. You take down one of those big shields, you can start moving your way forward, but with Denthead taking the Diva down, there's no defense matrix to keep everyone alive. And Mind Your Manners, they hold on. 30% ticking over.
Is going to be coming in with a Blizzard to this next fight as well. So Annie's going to be coming in with the Science Bar, but you've got to use it defensively. You do have Greg. If Greg is able to get this defense matrix to connect with the Blizzard, then Annie gets to use that ultimate to allow the team to go extremely aggressively, but until then, you're waiting to see that ultimate come out.
Oh, he nearly caught the Blizzard there as well. Knew the timing for it. Went straight over the wall, but it comes out regardless. No more Defense Matrix in sight. HG Broke takes down Deadhead. A lot of the damage now gone. I don't think he actually meant to freeze the Lucio there, but it doesn't matter. 303 is still continuing forward here. Akash hits a nice shadow to end things off. It's finally going to be 303 taking over the point.
And HK now can revel in the fact that there isn't a Lucio on the other side, and Biz just threw in the Blizzard. There was nothing barring a shield bash, a supercharges, or if you wait a little bit too long, a shatter that can stop your blade from being absolutely huge. And you can see, look at where he's standing though. He's hoping that they don't notice, but
his dash! Oh, I thought his dash got eaten. I thought it was the end of the world, but he does eat the immortality field. That now gone. He gets to play. It's still up though. It's just enough heals from Mind Germano's going to keep their whole team alive now. Akash running straight for the backline, thinking the blade would give him enough space, but the blade didn't do much of anything as Mind Germano's going to take it back over and start ticking towards last fight.
Deadhead sticks in the middle of the composition. He sort of plays Reaper the way you see people play McCree, using those shotguns as a deterrent in place of that flashbang, and it's enough to keep 303 off the backs of MYM. And now we're going to be seeing Biz coming in with Blizzard, and Annie needs to hit that sound barrier quickly.
Yeah, it's a rush there, but the Blizzard's already going to come out here. Knows the D.Va isn't looking at him. Immediately drops to the Reinhardt now in a world of hurt. Akash kept only up by the immortality field of Alexio, but that's only got so much HP. Taking him down is Mind Germano, 96% taking over the point. It's all up to Annie and his DPS. Zeus has a Death Blossom. Could come in for something big here. It's not all over yet for Mind Germano's as they're slowly bleeding out player. Starscream, though, coming in. DPS D.Va on the point. Death Blossom into the back line. Only catches one overtime ticking over, but it's 303 who have the first respawns. Both Reinhardt's on the point. The self-destruct doesn't catch anything. Now it's going to be Greg's turn. How much does he get? Nothing! This fight's still going on, Moxie.
They need to keep it going, though. HK and Akash, they're so close to ultimate.
Overtime takedown! No!
They didn't touch.
Oh, that stings. As well, they were coming in with the blade. They had every tool to try and retake that point.
They knew what was coming as well. Greg boosts up into the air to keep the mech, knowing full well he's going to be so close with that dash, with that blade. But unfortunately, both are in the air. Both aren't touching that point. And because that fight had been going on for so long, it's a blink and you'll miss that moment, duh. And bam, off we go to the next sub-map of Oasis. Off we go to a check what 303 are going to be coming out of the gates with. And even though this is a dive-friendly map, they're opting into this double shield.
It hasn't worked out from before. It needs to work out for them now. If they want to not get reverse swept by Mind Germano's, they have to find that tank duo. They have to find the synergy here and now. They set themselves up on the point. We're looking for Hawk combos. We're looking for promise. Big dynamite from Zeus. Not combo with anything, but you do appreciate the effort from 5 seconds until point unlocked. And 5 seconds till Mind Germano steps on that gas pedal. Akash putting the shield way aggressively, giving no respect over to Pair, which I absolutely love. The first point check's going to go over to 303 for that. They lose Biz in the back line. 303, they were expecting that Mind Germano's were going to adapt for a dive. Hawk combo over the top, though. They're still in it. A lot of damage being thrown their way. 303 have not sealed this one out yet, Moxie.
But Immortality Field has been forced out from MYM, and now if you're 303, you can get aggressive. You know the kills are going to stick.
Oh, but you've got an amplification makes to make things hurt a lot. 303 in all this time, though, they're gaining percentage. Dunthead is in the backline taking down the immortality field, but your front line's dying in the meantime. Mind your Manners have completely separated themselves apart, but Biz and Deadhead cleaning things up on the DPS line is going to be just enough special sauce that they needed.
Akash trying to drop the supercharger, trying to buy the space back, but unfortunately that's an ultimate that you want back because now you have nothing to try to give HK Broke that little bit extra when it comes to that blade. You can try to go for the Sigma Flux to, you know, drop them below 50% health, but it is such a risky play, especially because MYM will have Immortality Field, they'll have Supercharges, they'll have Molten Core, so much spatial control that just shuts a Genji's mobility completely down.
Going to be a struggle here for HK for sure, but they've got a Bob to engage. They've got a couple of tools that they can use here, and they can wait out a lot of the tools of Mind Your Manners. Hell, even take down Biz on the way. Zeus gets traded out, but you're kind of okay with that one at this point. You have more damage to follow up. HK does have a blade coming online if they can survive that long, but Deadhead's doing Deadhead things, takes down the main support, takes down one more, and Mind Your Manners should be able to stabilize off this so long as they can stop HK from binding a massive blade.
But you can't blade. You've lost your Batiste. You've only got a Brigitte. You've got to hold on to this ultimate. Safe. And Door, if you're free, you've got to go for the quick reset. 51% already and climbing for MYM because these shield fights, they go on for so very long. And if you're MYM, well, you're making sure that you don't let them get close. They know that HQ is going to be coming in with that blade. They know that Zeus has got that Bob, and they have to just stop these fights before they start.
They've got Bob. They're throwing everything and the kitchen sink into this fight. Bob already taken down, though. Now it's HP's turn to go into the back line. No immortality field on his way. How much can he get? 50 HP to his name, but not a single kill. Nothing found, but mind your business, finding themselves at 80%, ticking over into last fight territory, Mux. They've almost pulled off the reverse sweep.
303 need to get out quickly. They have one fight left, and they just lost their Sigma. Akash is going to have to go on to the hammer just to try and touch, but you've got to be so careful. You can't afford to be lost before that hits 97%.
They get the contest. Akash goes down. They don't swap to any other stall heroes. Annie's onto a Lucio, but that's it. HE comes in, meets himself a nice rifle, gets taken out. 303, they've done it. They've pulled this one all the way behind. Mind Your Manners were more than happy to step on the gas pedal, turn this one around, find themselves a reverse sweep, and set themselves up 303. They've got respawns. Everyone's back, Moxie. How on earth have they managed this?
Sigma Flux. Greg's able to get the Sigma Flux off, and now 303. They can try and stabilize. They just need to get a pick, but that's going to be so hard to do because Biz has got the Molten Core, Pascal's got Amplification Matrix, so many ultimates available for MYM.
So many Qs, but it's about how they use them. They don't have the spawns, they have the damage. HD gets taken out. Now it's going to be the Sigma. They still haven't checked over the point. They've been knocked off. And Mind Your Manners find the full reverse sweep.
303. They saw the moment. This Sigma Greg is doing everything he possibly can. Coming back in, picking up those kills was huge. But unfortunately, he just didn't have anything to follow it. And look at what MYM had at their disposal when that fight properly starts kicking off, though. Because they've got to stay on the picks that they wanted. Because they weren't forced onto the Lucio. Because they weren't forced onto the Hammond. They've got 2 extra ultimates in the tank. And those 2 extra ultimates are all the difference that they need to spiral that into a map and a series victory.
And I can't help but feel bad for 303. You go 0-3 into reverse sweep. It just doesn't feel good for them. There's so much promise there, though. I mean, look at the players individually. Zeus, HK, Akash, Greg, their support lineup was playing pretty well. We mentioned the immortality fields onto the Arista, but it's kind of something they had to do based on the team composition that they were playing. Alexio still, of course, is still playing fantastically, but I think this was just compositional differences time and time again. And then when it came to the double shield, it was just the tank synergy. But like I said, on an individual basis, 303 on paper are a fantastic team.
But that was the problem. They're a fantastic team individually. And we like the DPS, they had this synergy. The backline, they also had this synergy. When Annie stops going for those really aggressive, in-your-face Lucio plays and starts sticking a little bit closer to home, making sure that everyone's safe with the speed boost, so going over to the break, making sure that you've got Shield Bash ready for when someone comes for your Batiste or tries to go for an early pick onto an Orisa, that's when they really shone. Unfortunately, where they were lacking was that tank lineup, that synergy coming through. And when you have an Orisa who's getting so much value with the Hulks that is there on the other side, and every time we saw a Hulk coming out from MYM, it was followed up by a Dynamite, by an Accretion, by so many Shurikens just being spammed straight into that space. And then when we saw the Hulks coming out from the side of 303, it was like it was pulled tumbleweed. There was just no damage that was immediately following it through. And it can be such a very, very impactful ability to the point where so many people have challenged anti-nade and defense matrix the position of those as the most powerful abilities that aren't ultimates. Halt is definitely up there, but it's only if you have that cohesion, if you have that team play. And I think we even got to see like how long did it take the community to figure out that Orisa and Roadhog worked well together? They've both been in the game for so long, but we only really got to see the pulled pork composition coming out for about the last year. And I think that's something that Furioufy really struggled with, identifying when those Orisa halts were coming through and when they could follow up with them.
Yeah, when it came to playing as a team, Mind Your Manners did it better. And I think that's the biggest thing they have. Of course, yes, they're playing the double shield. Yes, they're playing a meta composition. Boohoo, this, that. I mean, you can't refute how many times Deadhead took somebody's head off. And I think that's going to be the big difference maker. Like you said, the team play, just the way they synergized together, the tank lineup was doing a fantastic job. So many props to Mind Your Manners. They pull away with the reverse sweep. And honestly, my man of the match, it's got to be Denthead. I don't know who else you can give it to on this roster. They played fantastically together, but the guy who's pulling out fights when the team work could not, it was always him.
I mean, do you know what? I'm gonna throw a bone over to 303. HK. This guy, he came so close to pulling out all the stop stuff. And if there was an MVP vote for the losing side, it's got to be him. Think about that, Blade. Think about that moment on Blizzard World where it's a losing team fight. And not only
Mm-hmm.
does he have the ultimate, and not only does he get to survive, he uses it properly. He doesn't go for the targets in front of him. He goes for the backline. He goes where he knows there is going to be a distracted player so that he's got the best chance at successfully getting someone out while he's still got breath in him. And time again, when we saw these team fights coming in, when we saw HK so close to those ultimates, we look to him. We look to him to get the fight going into the favor of 303 when they were in a tight spot. And he did a very good job. He was keeping pace with Biz. He was coming up with ultimates when the team needed him, and I think if you had had that Orisa Holt coming in, he would have been ahead of Biz as well. Because the fact that you can keep pace with a Genji who's got that Holt combination, who you know are going to like guarantee you 20% plus ult charge when you have those Holt shurikens being comboed up, then you have to take your hat off and applaud.
Well, you can give him player of the match, but we can't give 303 the match. Commiserations to them. They tried their hardest. And with the ringer, it didn't look too bad. Mind Your Manners, they'll come away with the victory. Congratulations to them. As for us, though, ladies and gents, that's going to be all we have for tonight. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you want to follow anybody helping producing the stream, casting the stream, there's an exclamation point casters in the chat. Follow Moxie, and I think our handles are right below us somewhere. Thank you guys so much for watching, though. Have a good night.